Good morning, listeners and viewers. A pleasure to be here this morning with you live on Spice FM. Jaff is having a holiday. He's off somewhere. He's having a laugh, is what he is. But I have an extraordinary, extra special, extra guest on the show for you this morning. Before we introduce him to you, and obviously for those of you who can't see him, won't know who he is yet, but he's an incredibly famous person. He's a producer, actor, director, all-round brilliant person is what he is, and he's doing so much for our region, platforming and showcasing it globally is what he is. Okay, anyway, you're listening to Ammar Without Jaff live on Spice FM, and each week we'll bring you some news, views, and one or two clues from the business world. Asian Business Connections aims to connect, support, and promote the Asian and wider communities. So whether you have an existing business, want to start a business, or just want to talk business, we can help. Good morning, Craig.
Good morning. That was a lovely intro. Never had that one before. That's great, that. I'll come back here again.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's how are you? Where are you? When are you?
Yeah, well, I'm here. I'm in the present. I'm in Washington at the moment, in Thailand, in between the three cities of the north, in equidistant between Durham, Sunderland, Newcastle. That's where I am. Equidistant.
Equidistant. What a wonderful word.
It is, isn't
equidistant. It? So let's kick off, Craig. I asked you some questions. You kindly answered them, but the ones I probably want to start with is, who are you? What do you do?
Yeah.
And why do you do it?
So, well, I've been an actor for 30 plus years now. And I started off in the region, funnily enough, at Northern Stage many, many years ago, and the likes of the Live Theatre. But I was an original ensemble member there. So I ended up playing a lot of lead roles and touring the UK and touring Europe with shows that were made and created in the region, and then went out all over under the direction of a man at the time called Alan Lydiard, who at the time was an incredible innovator for theatre and multimedia productions. And that became my kind of drama school, really, because I couldn't afford to go to drama school. So getting a job in theatre and then being able to kind of grow and learn from all these practitioners from all over the world who would come to Newcastle, that was always something quite special for me. And by doing that, I ended up in a position where I was doing my own one-man shows from that. I ended up getting jobs in TV and film. And from that, it led me on a journey out of the region, because at that time you had to have an agent in London. You had to, be in the city where it all happened and be in the capital. And so I fled down there, tried to keep working, tried to keep surviving as an independent creative and a jobbing actor. And very soon found myself making my own projects, producing films, working with others and other independent creatives. And then when the pandemic hit, we'll all remember the industry, our industry in particular, completely collapsed. Nobody had agents, nobody had jobs, nobody knew what to do. And suddenly your identity was completely lost. You were left in a state of going, well, I don't know how I define myself anymore because I don't have an industry around me. So that led me to come back to the Northeast, where I met my partner, Andrea, and we ended up supporting a lot of actors who'd been dropped by agents because suddenly they were worthless. So agents closed, other actors and creatives got dropped, people had no work. So we set up an online resource where we were talking, mentoring and doing whatever. And we decided to set up an agency on universal credit in the middle of a pandemic and open our doors and our kind of hearts and minds to people who needed some kind of support while they were in this hiatus. So we did that, and we set up a community radio station too. and we'd go on and do live shows during the pandemic. I would speak to actors and directors from years of working with them, and share stories. And then eventually the pandemic lifted, but it was still not really getting any better. The independents were still left behind. They were still kind of sitting in this hiatus bubble going, well, who's going to help me? Who's going to give me the permission to be creative again? And it led me to have many conversations, a lot of them with you, where it was like, well, hang on, whose permission are we waiting for to create things? What is the gateway that we have to pass through in order to be creative? Because surely that's a kind of birthright, really. It's creativity's in every one of us, whether you're business, whether you're creative industries. And so after much kind of backwards and forwards, we started working and engaging with the universities. University of Sunderland in particular helped me to produce 2 feature films, one which I was directing, which is now going to Glasgow, and the other one, which came from America. It was due to go to Manchester, and we brought it to the Northeast instead. And we shot the whole film there using their resources, their support, but with our professionalism and our understanding of how to make films. And that has led to where we are now, which is the Runway Rooms. And the Runway Rooms is an open door. It's an access for creatives to come together. It's for us to collaborate, communicate, and then respond to that and go, okay, if we can't get the funding application done, if we can't get regional government support and things like that, how do we then connect to our community, make it work, and produce content that we want to make? Because I know for a fact there are hundreds and hundreds of regional creatives who are producing wonderful content, and they're producing wonderful kind of work and relationships with community and engaging in very innovative ways, but they're not being seen, and they're waiting to be seen. So this allows us to create a meeting point where we go, okay, well then let's be the showcase ourselves, and let's begin that journey and see where that goes through collaboration and communication, rather than kind of sitting back and going, how do I get this little bit of money to do this and this little bit to do that? Let's communicate and make it happen and make a move, because we need that.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. And it's wonderful to have you on the show. And actually, I'm just going to hijack you now and keep you on the show for the duration, right? Is what I'm going to do. Because I really do value and appreciate who you are, what you do, why you do it. I suppose, for those of our listeners and viewers who don't know who Craig Conway is, and I know you give us a bit of an abridged story. So were you born here, Craig? Were you brought up here? Give us some of the highlights, the headlines of your movies, your shows, all of the things that you've done.
Okay. Well, I was born in South Shields, and I grew up there, and we had a very basic upbringing, and it was quite a turbulent one. But my mum was a mother of 3. She ended up becoming a single mum of 3 kids. So between her and my nana, they kind of looked after us, brought us up, and got us going. And then around 1984, I think it was, I moved up to Washington, because at that time it was like, this is the new town. Everything's going to happen here, and it was quite Americanized. I remember, everybody. All the jazz bands used to be out and playing in the streets and on the grass, and we had these Jubilee carnivals and American flags and all that kind of stuff. And I remember it being quite crazy, because everybody was kind of selling this area as almost like the American dream. Do you know what I mean? And it was bizarre. But I just remember my mom going, "This is it. This is our chance." And she got a job up here, and so she kind of moved us up. We got into Washington, and then from here I started joining.
Who's we? So was it just you? Was there anyone else? Or?
My mum and my sister. My brother ended up staying with my nana in South Shields, and then he joined the army and left. And in fact, the majority of my family went into military. They all kind of left the area and joined the army and stuff. So my uncle and everybody, aunties, they've all got this kind of army connection. And I was the only one. I did the cadets for a bit, and I joined the
Okay.
TA for a little bit.
Did you?
I
All
did,
right.
and I did actually apply. I went on my careers advice session at the Northumberland Centre. I did go and speak to the army and officers there, and I said, "Oh, do you still have ENSA?" And I don't know if you remember ENSA, but in the wartime, that was the entertainment group. And he went, "No,
It
that's
was
gone." And I
called
went,
what?
"It was called ENSA. It was the entertainment department of the army that would entertain the troops."
Right.
So in my head, I thought, "Oh, well, actually, I could join the army and I could still kind of like do a number. You know what I mean? Me jazz
Right.
hands to get them
Yeah.
out." And they just laughed at me and went, "No." and we don't think this is probably right for you. And I was like, "Well, thank you very much." So that was
Really?
um and then yeah, like I say, I got into drama groups. I was quite a frightened kid and quite a shy kid. Um and because of our upbringing, it was quite, there were lots of things going on that were quite um untoward and aggressive, and it was a really uncomfortable upbringing. But
Mm.
drama and creativity became such a wonderful place for me to kind of experiment and experience other people in a world
Right.
that I felt safe. And I think that's really important. Creativity brings a lot for people and gave me a lot of confidence to be who I knew I was and who I am. So, and that was it. I started on a journey. I got invited into school plays, then plays outside of school and college, and then eventually um, I started doing theatre and education, going around the region, doing community pantomimes for areas that, kind of couldn't afford to go to your theatre walls and places like that. I would go
Mm.
to juvenile institutes, young offenders institutes, work with them, develop short films or plays or play readings, and started writing and developing my own work. And then I got picked up for lead roles and parts in plays, which led on to directors seeing me in shows and then getting auditions for big TV shows like Our Friends in the North, which was the first big TV show I ever did. And from there, I got an agent in London and started kind of traveling around the world, really, and doing shows and plays and theatre and TV and film. It was pretty crazy.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And I think um, yeah, that background, that groundedness of understanding, the military, understanding like the fact that you're good at communicating, right? As in that's the most significant part, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think communication's everything. And also that empathy to
Yeah.
understand that you might end up playing the lead in a show, for instance, but actually, as a bit of an empath, you're not
Mm.
there to play the part. You're there to tell somebody else's story. That's important, to give somebody else an opportunity to share their words, their experiences, and how that has an impact on your life. So it's a humbling experience because I guess the instinct is to go, oh, it's all about me. Look at that. But actually, the pleasure of being able to go, I am playing the likes of George Orwell. I mean, I'm a working class lad and I'm playing a part of a literary genius. And I'm in the middle
Yeah.
of Spain with people who were affected by that civil war back then. And I'm standing there with presidents and people like that playing George Orwell with all of these people from different backgrounds, cultures, and I couldn't believe it. But we're all there to tell that story together from an equal basis as just being a performer. And that's quite a liberating feeling, that.
Fair enough. Brilliant. Um, yeah, I think I think you're absolutely right. It's like that liberation feeling of connecting. Um, but interesting, interesting. And I wonder, Craig, what gets you out of bed? What's your why?
My why is because I feel I've got a responsibility to engage with other people and get them to feel safe in exploring their world. I want to encourage that. I want to encourage people to not, as I said before, wait for permission. We can spend the whole of our lives wondering if we can do something. So what gets me up in the morning is going, today I'm going to try that little bit harder. I'm going to push that little bit further and see whether or not I can progress. And that's all it is really. It's to experience what it is to be in that moment when you can actually be who you are. That's an exciting prospect.
I think that's be who you are. So we had the Curry Club last night at Newcastle Building Society, and when I got to, I don't know if you're aware or not, but they are in an art monument.
Right.
So they've got a branch at monument. It's on a few floors, and downstairs is the community room that they've got. It's a really good space, small kitchen type of multifunction type room where people can come together. Anyway, and I was there, and whilst I was there, we actually spoke to them about being a mutual. So Newcastle Building Society is there for its members, as opposed to like shareholders or banks. And that's an incredible, powerful thing, isn't it? Because if you think about community, and and we talk about this regularly, Craig, is the power of community, the power of this, the power of us, and it truly aligns to and with what ABC stands for as well. ABC is a not-for-profit social enterprise. We set it up in 2009 to be exactly that. It's a case of it is a case of connecting, supporting, and promoting, and it's just to have a building society. And yes, of course, we've got listeners all over the world. We've got viewers that watch our our channels and things like that. But Newcastle is a great place. It's a great city with great people, and it is arguably the capital of the Northeast, isn't it? Would you not say that? Yeah,
I would say so. Yeah, and I think there's a willingness, isn't there, as well, to at the moment to say, look, we're a region, and of course there's always a kind of a precedence in that, because Newcastle has it's kind of one of the oldest cities. It's always been if you like, the benchmark of where everything else follows, type of thing, and I think the more that we embrace that, rather than at times the separatism, because I live over this side of the water, I'm not part of Newcastle. Because I live in Newcastle, I can't be part of that. I love the fact that that's starting to go, and Newcastle has always, I feel anyway, has always tried to have that inclusivity, to widen its spread and say, look, we're all engaged in this together. We're one big region. But you come up here and you come into that city, and it's incredible. It's beautiful, and it's vibrant. And now there's developments all over the region. I go, this is great. This is an extension of who we are, and it's exciting. But I like the idea of a building society as well. Banks and building societies, those kind of things scare people.
Yeah.
because you always feel like you're on a back foot. So if a bank or a building society is talking about community and engaging with people and having this personal connection, that's exciting as well. Really exciting.
Yeah, I agree. It's like, as you say, it's having financial institutes, So I was like, this is the greatest city, the greatest place, it's the greatest people. And when I talk about Newcastle, I'm not just talking purely about Newcastle. I'm talking about Sunderland, I'm talking about Middlesbrough, I'm talking about, all of the major cities and spaces and places across our northeast, Craig. And I, wonder, and I said this, so Newcastle Building Society must be the greatest building society, right? As in, if it's filled in that. But they do, their values and vision are all around trust, fairness, right? And doing the hard thing, even when it's not, or doing the thing, even when it's not the easiest of things, even if it's hard. Um, and it was good, and it was a great dialogue, great conversation, with so Sir John Hall was there, the Police and Crime Commissioner was there. We had a range of people from across the public, private, third sectors. We had a range of people from across the various institutes and institutions. It's like, and various colours and genders and everything else. And it's great to have that honest conversation, because I put out a post yesterday or the day before, or ABC did. Anyway, my article for Northern Insight, if you haven't read it, and that's a wonderful person on the front of it. But if you haven't read The Return of Jedi, then you need to check it out. It is very much an article about justice, equality, diversity, and inclusion. So it's like, there is what it is. If you haven't seen that article, there you go. Self-care weekend, Eldon Square next door. Anyway, it's really, really interesting, and I'm more interested in the fact that they've used Return of the Jedi, because that's obviously not something I can use, because that's not what I'm talking about. It's more Return of Jedi is what it is. So we are in a very peculiar space and place, aren't we? As in, from where people are, how they're feeling, type of thing.
Yeah.
And it's scary, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. I think there's a lot of there's a lack of clarity in the sense of in especially in our industry. There's a lot of talk at the moment, big moves, big money, government throwing money into the Northeast, and that's all exciting and wonderful, and it's the big bells and whistles and big opportunities. But the individuals don't necessarily feel connected to that. There's lots of courses. There's lots of come and get a wee experience for several weeks in this, or have a position that's a kind of, voluntary or non-paid position, or very little paid position, where you can come away with something which says, yes, I stood next to these people, I said something, and then now I'm back going, what do I do? How do I start again? So all those things, and I'm not kind of trying to demise that some of that is beneficial, but overall, the story that we need to understand is what is available, and when does it become available to us? Because we work and live in the creative industries every single day. We don't get up and go, oh, I think I'll just be a creative today. People in the creative sectors, you have to make it a life choice. You can't do it part-time. So for creatives, you might have to be doing several other small jobs in order to have one creative pursuit. Well, that kind of seems very unfair and mismanaged, because it's impossible to be a DPD driver by day while you're trying to produce a show at night, because that's burnout. And that's what that leads to.
Yeah.
And anxiety and fear and panic. And being a creative should not be assumed with, oh, that means you don't know how to work properly or get a job. Being a creative is a job, and it's also a lifestyle.
Of course it is. And on that note, it's not just about creatives. Or, you know, when we're talking about inclusion by default, it very much is around this pendulum that I refer to. And it's interesting because, you know, both of us are big fans of Stranger Things, aren't we?
Yeah.
Huge. It's like, if you think about it, it's like, yeah, a big deal is what it is. And from our perspective, one of the things that I loved about Stranger Things is, despite it being this outrageous fiction, or you'd like to think so, right? Who knows? There might be Vecnas and all of these things going around. And I don't mind being actually, no, I was going to say, do I mind being a number? Yeah, I probably do. I don't want to be a number. I want to be a name. But you know, numbers, you know, having 11 and 7 and 1 and whatever else. Anyway, if you haven't seen it, you won't have a clue what we're talking about. But there's some real interesting elements to it in regards to time, right? Because it introduces this concept of, you know, you're marked, I'm coming to get you because your time's running out. And it's almost based on the Grim Reaper type of scenario. And you've got some underlying anxiety or challenge or issue that you've experienced. Anyway, forget about everything else, but the pendulum, right? And actually coming back to the conversation we were having at the Curry Club last night was all around inclusion, right? And inclusion, I was sharing some very personal stories about when I was growing up and how we'd gone from being very affluent to suffering abject poverty. And it's horrendous, right? Once you've had something, Craig, right, it's you then miss it when you haven't got it.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to you've never had it. So how could you arguably miss it? Because you don't know what you didn't have, type thing, right? And equally, if I translate that or relate that to actors and people in the creative industry, you do this roller coaster type of scenario, don't you? You know, I mean, let's just talk through some of the movies. You know, you're a bona fide, hugely credible, successful actor. But then we have honest, authentic conversations about days where, you know, you're not getting paid millions of pounds and whatever else. And, you know, you sat there, because that's the challenge with the creative industry, isn't it? The ups and downs, the lumpiness of things. And I wondered, you know, from that perspective, I wondered what we could do to make things more inclusive. And then I was thinking about the point that you've just made. You know, I remember going to Los Angeles even. I still remember, or maybe I don't remember going to Las Vegas. I've definitely been there. But, Los Angeles, and it was fascinating to see firsthand how, you know, actors went to Hollywood and people involved in that. And, you know, they'd be working in restaurants and bars and whatever else, and they've written a script and they've done this and all of these type of things. And that real lack of opportunity and disparity in, you know, people who have made it and people who haven't, right, is the thing. And it just felt and feels like there's a bit more of an opportunity to do something here, locally, in the Northeast. And if I go through my limited experiences of support in this particular sector, it almost feels like, you know, naturally the support that's available is for those who already have it, because they can demonstrate that they've had it and do it and all of those type of things. But it's not available necessarily for those who haven't got it. And you're addressing that from an inclusion perspective, aren't you? So just talk through the runway rooms. What are they? Where are they? Why are you developing this? And what can we do to support that?
Well, I think you've hit the key point, especially about the pendulum, and just to give a bit of reference as well to that. You know, you're absolutely right. Over my kind of 30 odd years of acting, you know, I've stood along some incredible actors, you know, from Gary Oldman, Pierce Brosnan, Dave Bautista, you know, action stars, movie stars, and big directors too, you know, Mike Leigh, Neil Marshall, all these people. But again, there's this real feeling of you can hit the heights, and what most creatives are told are. And I'll give you a prime example for this. So when I worked on a particular movie, and I won't say the name of it, but it had big stars in it. Mm-hmm. And the audition process was quite grueling. You know, you can you get this job? Can you not? And your agent's going, this is going to be good. This is going to be brilliant. And then when you get the part, I was very much tailed off by Hollywood suggesting if I did not accept a particular wage on this job, then they would give it to somebody with a name. So they would spend more money by giving it to somebody who had a bigger profile than me. But if I kept quiet and just took the payment slip at a very, very reduced rate, this would be good for my career. Now, that kind of hierarchical gameplay is what ruins this industry. And why I love being in the independent sector, because with the runway rooms, what we're kind of trying to concentrate on is the ability and the agility of a region that can come together to create content and stories from this region about our people, and then distribute them to outside of the region and to other places in the world, so we can connect culturally, emotionally, and creatively. And we want to attract people to this region to shoot, rather than us having to travel to them, because we have everything at our disposal, like everything from education to employment, facilities, and filmmaking now is not costly. I don't care what anybody says. It does not cost millions to make a movie. And you also don't need a superstar in your movie, because the true sense of filmmaking is that watching a film that you connect to as a human produces the stars. Stars don't make films, they market them. That's the difference. So if you make a good story, you'll inevitably produce a star from that. Because if the film is good and the content is good, you create success. Because people want to see it and they feel connected to it.
Brilliant. I love that analogy. Okay, so what are you doing? Tell me what you're doing, where you're doing it, when you're doing it, and how you're doing it.
Well, we've already started now. We've optioned a few local scripts. And one of, in particular, which we'll announce very soon, actually, one in particular has been a successful regional stage play. So we're taking the play, we're developing it into a film script, and we're going to shoot the whole picture here in the region. And it's going to, the content of it is very particular. And obviously, we've had World Cancer Day. So the content and the themes and the focus of it incorporate what it's like to live with cancer. And in particular, breast cancer for this particular project. Right. But that's going to be the first one. But it's a comedy. It's engaging. It's got the drama. It's got the connection to the region. But it's a worldwide problem. And it's something that can unite cultures and people from every ethnicity, from every background, from wherever you are. Yeah. You will know somebody who is suffering or going through that. So then there's also a celebration of how do we come through that together? How do we support one another? And how do we communicate that? Well, film is a medium that can work all over. And you know, we can work with wonderful companies like Flawless AI And I know people are very
And
scared of
what's that
AI.
then? Tell me what's flawless AI?
Well, Flawless AI was created by one of the founders, Scott Mann, who is from the Northeast as well. He's now in LA, but he set up a company in Santa Monica and in London now, and they're producing technology through AI which supports and enhances and gives the opportunity for films to be localized to their regions. So if I shoot a film here in the Northeast, but I want somebody in Southeast Asia to see my picture, I can then, using my performance, my voice, my tones, my everything, to support me being able to speak in that language in that country. Because sometimes with just the old fashioned, and I say old fashioned, I don't mean it flippantly, but sometimes when we dub things, the timings can be out. So this way it works with the performance, and it's very ethical. It's all about how to support the actual production and the actors and protect them. And they've become a huge successful company, and I've done a few proof of concepts with them, and they're incredible to work with, and it's very ethical, and it isn't about stealing the actor's performance. I think there's a lot of scaremongering going on in the AI world, and yes, rightly so, but I think we need to also try and embrace where that goes, and work with companies like Flawless.
Brilliant. I think that's and what's happening then next week?
So on the Friday, 13th of February, not unlucky, very lucky, we're opening the doors at ISS Airview, which is right next
Which
to
is where?
right next to Newcastle Airport. So Callerton Parkway. If you're getting the metro, and actually for me from Sunderland, you'd think, oh, that's a long way to travel. It's actually brilliant, and it doesn't take long at all. So from Monument, it's like, I don't know, 10 minutes if that. But for me, it's a real pleasure. If you're coming from Sunderland or anywhere outside of the towards Newcastle Airport, it's a good chance to read a script. And I do lots of notes and connect with people while I'm traveling, so it's lovely. But yeah, you come out of Callerton Parkway Metro, turn right, and there it is. Literally a minute away from you, a beautiful, brand new, spanking, wonderful building, which is going to be the rooms for development, for creativity, for workshops, for events that can connect us together and get guest speakers and people like that. But also, it's a place where we can begin the discussion. We can start getting together and saying, look, this is what we need in the independent sector. And actually, this is what we need to protect filmmaking. Because at the moment, everybody's trying to reduce content and make vertical dramas, which are still relative and important and exciting. But we're not supporting these films that can actually enhance and change lives. And we need to do that. And we need to educate and train and support one another. So that's what the Runway Rooms is all about. Absolutely. And there is ample parking there as well. I'm just going to
There is. And it is all about sort of showcasing, sharing, creating a hub for people to come together, isn't it? I mean, that's ultimately what we're looking to do, which is brilliant. Right, well, Jamie's going to kill me if I haven't gone through his deck, so let's just have a broader, wider talk, Craig, is what we tend to do. So that's why I was sort of looking around to see what Jamie had kindly put into the presentation for today. Yeah, let's go through that and talk through what's going on, what's been going on, how it's going on, where it's going on, and when it's going on as well. I mean, one of the things, Craig, that we try and do through this conversation in particular is sort of connect, support, and promote people, right? And that's ultimately what ABC is all about, is what it is. So let's now have a look at, we need to push these buttons and I'm going to share my screen and just talk at this presentation for a minute or two, and then invite your comments and contribution, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Jaff sadly isn't here, and the headlines this week is government issues new guidance to help businesses prepare for employment law changes. The government has issued new guidance to help employers prepare for reforms under the Employment Rights Act 2025, which ministers say is aimed at creating a fairer, more secure labour market while supporting growth. A new online hub offers free practical support for the UK's 1.4 million employers, including timelines, summaries of changes and actions to take from April this year. And you desperately and definitely need to prepare for it. It's a bit of a controversial bill for employers, because it felt as if employers were once again feeling and taking the brunt. But from April, statutory sick pay will be paid from day one of absence, alongside new day one rights for parental and paternity leave, with further reforms phased in over 2 years to give businesses time to adapt. Problem with any of this, right, is somewhat, and I'm just purely looking at it from an employer's perspective. Of course, as an employee, you'd like to think, Craig, that you've recruited someone and they've done so in the best interest of them and the company, and it's a relationship. The risk with that, because we're hearing from so many employers, is by introducing these type of mechanisms, someone could potentially, right, declare, and obviously you can't discriminate, right, but someone could literally come and join your company and then go on the sick straight away, couldn't they?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a dangerous one to have in place. However, I mean, when somebody comes to you for a job, I guess what you have to do is try and be open enough to go, well, actually, if somebody's keen enough to turn up for the interview, to turn up to show you their CV, have the CV, and go through the mechanisms in place to ensure that they're being vetted, ready for the job, then if you're doing that part of the process right, you shouldn't have any worry about it, because most employees are grateful to be working. I would have thought that, but you're right. There'll always be people who will look to take advantage of an opportunity.
And that is the case, isn't it? It's like it's challenging, it's sad, it's like, how do you, anyway, here we are. That's the news in that regard. Let me go back to the rest of the news and share with you British factories cut US exports. I mean, this is really challenging with the whole US side of things, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I guess, everybody's looking at the US moves. I mean, everybody. And in our industry especially, there's been all of the scaremongering again around the tariffs and, trying to connect everybody again back to Hollywood. How do we do that? How does America make film great again? But I think because people are and have experienced coming to this country to make their films with tax credits and things like that, we're in a position where a lot of people aren't going to just rush back, because they're creating content and creating work and opportunities and getting the benefits of that by being in our country. So again, there's a lot of variance, and I would think there's a lot of concern about how this all works out, or how this kind of gives us a level playing field amongst all kinds of industries. But yeah, I mean, who knows with the US? I mean, it feels like there's a different announcement every hour at the moment. It's like the greatest movie ever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's scary, and I think you're right. But I mean, it's just the level of uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
High streets to receive £150 million boost, but it feels like a plaster. And there's a lot of that, isn't there? There's a real challenge. You know, UK high streets as part of a forthcoming high street strategy aiming to help town centres hit by closures, rising costs, and falling footfall, with details on allocation to follow. Ministers say the funding will help revive areas losing trade. I feel as if the horses bolted, Craig.
Yeah.
You know, look at, like, even this week, yesterday, Quiz announced administration. Like, all of these big, massive businesses are just going into administration. Businesses are failing with tariffs, trade, employment costs. It's just cost. And consumers aren't prepared to bear those costs anymore, are they? But you can't afford to.
No, not at all. I mean, look, my thing with the high street. In fact, I was literally talking about this yesterday because we're going to a premiere, for instance, right? To watch a screening of our movie, Red Riding. So we're going to head up to Glasgow, and we're saying, well, what do we wear? Like, what clothes do we wear? And let's go shopping, and let's go into town. But by the time you're getting into town and you're looking at the prices, the costs, and what it is to be out there for a day, even if I want to stop off for a bite to eat in between shopping and things like that, it's cost. What I would like to understand is, what is the true necessity of a high street? A high street was there to bring people together. A high street was there to share what we were creating to one another and offering that in exchange for things, an experience. High streets used to be packed when I was a kid because you were meeting people, you were engaging, you were seeing new, wonderful ideas being created, clothing, accessories, food, and all this stuff. It was a community gathering. High streets are cold. High streets are away from connecting to people. All they are doing is putting different price scales in the window to try and attract you with some, quick buck opportunity or bargain. But it's desperation at the moment. And every single high street is the same as the next. So there's no identity. You don't rush to the high street to enjoy yourself with your family for the weekend. That's what we should be doing. Yeah. So how do we make a high street engaging? We don't do it by just chucking money at it. We do it by going back to what high streets were, a place of exchange and an experience for people to engage with one another, and then by appreciation, buy an item of worth that you could take away and put into your life.
I think your point's incredibly well made, and I think you're absolutely right. Growing up as a child, it was like exciting. Whether it was Shields Road in the east end of Newcastle, West Road, City Centre, Northumberland Street, it was bustling. You couldn't get moved on a Saturday. You couldn't get moved. And whilst they are busy, they're nowhere near that busyness that they were or used to be. And they're peppered with a number of sort of businesses, which, respect to all the businesses. They're peppered with these businesses that no longer seem to be that relevant to pulling communities and people together. It's tends to be businesses that are more personal service and health and leisure type of thing. Anyway, that is what it is. Networking, importance of networking. So the SME Centre of Excellence have this business club that they've launched on the back of huge demand for it. Networking works when you treat it as relationship building, not pitching. Go in knowing who you want to meet and why. For example, referral partners, local decision makers, suppliers, or other owners at a similar stage. Be ready to explain what you do clearly in one sentence, plus a quick example so people remember you. Ask better questions. Follow up within 48 hours, build a networking rhythm. And once you have read the full guide that the SME has, put it into practice at a networking event on the 24th of February. Link in the blog. So open to all and free for SME Business Club members. So the link, if you go and check out SME, COFE, there'll be a link there as well. Setting up in Saudi, something that we've been super excited and working on for 4 or 5 years. We've got an event coming up also on the 24th of February. So it's all happening on the 24th of February, right? Is what it is. And check it out and get registered, even if just out of curiosity. Roundtable. So upcoming events. Roundtable on the 11th of February. That's literally next week at Raymond James. And then we've got a curry club on the 5th of March. I would encourage people to get along to that round table and check in and check out what's going on. And here's you introducing the Runway Rooms, Craig. So, I appreciate that I got you on a lot earlier. I'm hopeful and mindful that our listeners and viewers would have really appreciated what you had to share. It's a real pleasure. You've established so many things and really are passionate about the Northeast, aren't you?
Yeah, I love it. I really do. I've got a great love for
Why do you love it?
Well, it's, naturally it is my home, but also there is nowhere like this region. And it doesn't matter where you go. And I've been very, fortunate to travel with work. This is an extraordinary region. It's full of humility, passion, determination, and community, and we need to retain that. We need to create things that are embedded within our region, and retain that IP, retain that confidence, and again, as I say, open our doors for people to come to us, because we're always keen to go here, there, and everywhere. And there's that old saying, wherever you go in the world, you're sure to meet a Geordie. Like, it's true. You always meet somebody in the middle of wherever you are who's from the Northeast. And that's just brilliant. And people love this area. I've not met one person on any project who's come here to film, work, or whatever, who has left with a bad word to say. They've all absolutely loved this area. And long may it continue.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. I think it's brilliant. Thank you ever so much for joining us this morning, Craig, and sharing such wonderful insights. The Runway Rooms at ISS Airview is where it's all happening. If you're in the creative sector or you're just interested in, reach out to Craig. There is this event, which is definitely not on unlucky Friday the 13th. It's definitely lucky is what it is. And we'll be back next week with all of your news, views, and 1 or 2 clues. I'm going to invite Craig back on and start bringing on some guests as well. I feel as if the Runway Rooms should have a segment on our radio show on Spice FM, because it is for everyone, right? It's inclusion by default. Craig, any final words?
No, just look, Friday the 13th, please be there. And as I say, it's not even about being a filmmaker or a director of theatre. It's about being a creative entity, a human being that wants to explore themselves and stories around them. That's what we want. Brilliant.
You've been listening to Ammar without Jaff, but with the brilliant Craig Conway. If you're interested in some of the movies that he's planning, then do reach out, follow him on various social media channels and everything else. We'll be back next week. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.